morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining another special episode of the Good Leader Podcast. I just say it's special just to make it feel good. There's actually nothing different about it than most other episodes. On the show today, we got our whole team. We are here with Lim, Anj, Jess, the whole deck of cards. We're going to talk about culture. If you've been with us for the last few weeks, we're going back to the basics. We started with vision, what we call at Paradigm Shift the core three: your vision, your mission, your values. If you didn't listen to those, catch up a little bit, but because we talked about the difference between vision and mission. And then the last episode, we talked about values-based decision-making. But how does that all come together? It is a word that's kind of buzzwordy called culture. Are you doing those things well? If you want to know how are we doing with our vision, our mission, our values, are we where we want to be, and are we going where we want to go? You have to take a self-aware analysis of your culture. That's what we're going to do today. But before we get into that, let's talk about 8-Track to Emoji. We're still thick in the launch. This is launch week, launch month. I feel like a young millennial or a Gen Z with their birthday. You know, that's how I feel about this book. Because when I was a kid, you had a birthday. That's what you had. I was born on November 30th. So great. When it was your birthday, people told you, happy birthday. You might even have a birthday party on or very close to your birthday. One, singular. This is your birthday party. Now I notice people get birthday weeks. Some people now have birth months.
Or months.
Where do you land? Are you a birthday, a birth week, a birth month celebrator? What do you do?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I barely celebrate my actual day of birthday.
That's what I love about you,
I'm not
Anj.
a huge.
That's what I love about you. You're going to be working on your birthday. That's why I like Lemuel. Are you a birthday, a birth week, or a birth month celebrator? Be honest now. Be honest.
This is funny. I'm definitely a birthday. My wife is a birth week / month.
She's trending month. She's trending month. Okay.
I've got a good story. So we were dating. I celebrated her birthday with her the day before. So gave her a gift, took her out, and then, went home. It was as if that was her birthday. Well, the next day, I guess I had forgotten to actually wish her a happy birthday on her birthday. She was texting me. I'm like, what are you up to today? It had been out of my mind. She's like, do you hate birthdays? I said, what do you mean? And it totally dawned on me. I didn't wish her a happy birthday on the day. So I felt semi-justified.
Jail.
I got you a gift.
You're going to jail.
But she was really upset.
I don't blame her.
So
I think that's on you, buddy.
That's kind of
I think that one's on you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm.
That's how much you like birthdays.
I'm not a big celebrate the week or month type person. Jess, how about you? Are you a week, a month, 2 months? Jess, you celebrate the quarter? What do you do?
No, actually, I'm more of a birth weekend type of gal.
Oh, okay.
I always celebrate.
Yes,
I always
like
celebrate like the weekend before, the weekend after, like whatever's closest, and I usually make just a couple of days out of it, but nothing too crazy.
Okay, but then you also throw in the birthday. Like if your birthday's on a Wednesday, for example, you're going to celebrate like Friday, Saturday. Oh, but my real birthday
maybe like
is coming up.
Maybe like a dinner on the day of, and then when the weekend comes up, it's like celebratory with my friends type of thing.
It's interesting. Things like birthday celebrations really reveal a lot about your culture. How much are you celebrating? What are you celebrating? Why are we celebrating? And all those types of things. This is a little foreshadowing, a little teaser here. I didn't even expect this. This is just natural, Lemuel. This is the way it flows right here. That the mind, the mentalist just connects the dots, because how you celebrate culture tells a lot about who you are as a family, an organization, a team, all those things. In fact, you got a great quote that I love. I don't even know who said it. What's your quote that you found, Lemuel, to frame this day?
Here it is. Culture is what you correct, allow, and celebrate.
Culture is what you correct, allow, and celebrate. And we don't know who said that?
It's a lot of people have said different versions of that. So
okay, all right.
That specific line is kind of unknown.
Okay, well, I like that specific line. We actually use very similar phraseology, because at Paradigm Shift, when we're doing culture workshops with teams and we're talking about how to build culture, sustain culture, all of those things, we say you have to look at a quick litmus test, and we'll get to the details of that at the end. If you'll hang on, what's a litmus test? How do I know where our culture is? At the end of this episode, we'll give it a snapshot. But before we do that, I'm not in a birthday party. I am in a book release party. And like I said, I'm falling much more in line with, honestly, I mean, let me just be stereotypical. We're talking from 8-track to emoji. It's the kids these days. I am like a, gosh, what's the best comparison here? Maybe a young person who is not quite middle-aged. I don't know the terminology that I would want. Maybe approaching. I would say approaching. Maybe I notice this a lot in people who are approaching middle-aged. They're not there yet. They're wanting to hang on to their youth, but also celebrate where they are in life. I got a whole month, just like those individuals, that we are celebrating 8-track to emoji. We had a launch day. We got a launch party coming up. We got a launch week. So it's now, I'm just turning it into launch month. So Jess, where can people get the latest release from Paradigm Shift Publishing from 8-track to emoji? Tell us all about it.
You guys can find this book you can find it on Amazon actually now. You can actually buy a Kindle version of it on Amazon. All you have to do is search up From 8-Track to Emoji, but we sell it exclusively on www.jaredmurr.co.
And if you get it from jaredmurr.co, you might get some special bonus surprises in the packaging. So there are some reasons to go to jaredmurr.co. I can't tell you what all the surprises are, or it wouldn't be a surprise, but you got to check it out, jaredmurr.co. Thank you very much. Our 8-track to emoji moment of the day today is brought to you by Blimpie's. Blimpie's is a sandwich shop that used to be in existence. Are they still in existence? I don't know. Are Blimpies still around? I was trying to think of an old
Blimpie.
I was trying to think of it. Okay,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I was trying to make a joke and really hit a speed bump. I was trying to think of an old. Okay, this is brought to you by TG&Y. Thank you very much. This from 8-track to emoji is brought to you from TG&Y. If you don't know what that is, you're probably young. Here is my 8-track to emoji moment. Jess, you can tell me where on the scale from hip and with it all the way to okay, boomer, do I fall on this? I learned something recently.
Let's hear it.
For our What's Trending segment. I learned that K-pop
Okay.
is not the band. K-pop is a genre.
No, it sure is a genre.
K-pop is a genre, not the band
Korean pop.
of those young men that I often see. That's a band called like a really elaborate name, right? What's the band? The main band?
Is it BTS?
Yes.
BTS.
But also there is a girl group called Blackpink that is also a very popular.
Blackpink. That makes total sense. Okay, so Blackpink, Maroon. Why don't they just call themselves Maroon?
Also, hey, speaking of BTS, they in Korea.
BTS sounds like something I would get in trouble for talking about when I was in elementary school. What does BTS stand for? That sounds like something that's
I'm not sure.
Not really safe for work.
I'm not sure what it stands for, but they have to serve in the military. Like,
well, that's why I learned. I learned this. That's where I learned about it.
Yeah.
BTS,
okay, so I'm hipping with it. I know that. Oh, Lemuel, what's BTS?
Bulletproof Boy Scouts.
I don't believe you.
Wait, BPS, Bulletproof?
No.
BTS, Bulletproof Boy Scouts.
What's the T?
Bangtan Soyandan.
Oh, okay, the Korean. Okay.
Yeah.
BTS is the Korean word. Okay,
Bulletproof
all right, great.
Boy Scouts? Wow.
I probably
Yes, that's right.
butchered that.
That's true. Bulletproof. Don't worry, they can take it. Don't worry, they can take it. They're bulletproof.
They're going to be in the military.
Good thing. That's why they recruit them for the military. Like, hey, they're looking around. Why in the world do we not have our bulletproof Boy Scouts in arms? Let's go. We got super soldiers among us. Yeah, I heard that they were responsible or are responsible for like an astronomical number. Did you hear the number, Jess? I want to say, and Lemuel, you might be looking at the news report. I want to say it was $34 billion or something like that. It was insane. The amount of Korean currency that this group is responsible for.
They are very responsible for the fund. Like, they have made a lot of money for their country.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was
they were going to excuse them from serving in the military, and they would have been the first group of people to ever be excused from serving, but they were like, let's just go ahead and, do it and serve our country. So they're taking a break for 2 years.
So they said more than 3 billion, which is 7% of all tourists or tourism in the country is from their influence.
Wow, 3 billion. Okay, so I might have heard 3.4, not quite 34. I knew it was really high, not quite the crazy astronomical number, but still 3.4 billion with a B. Well, that's your From 8-Track to Emoji segment. You can raise your hand if you're like me and you didn't realize K-pop was an entire genre. I didn't realize that. I thought that was the band, the Bulletproof Boy Scouts that I always see. So now I know. And the more you know. You know, learning is indispensable, and we try to learn every single day. You know, I say closed-mindedness, that's the real sign of age. It's not when you don't know something. It's when you're unwilling to learn something new. So when we get back from the break, we're going to learn some maybe new things, maybe revisit some old things as we give you a litmus test for your culture and what does it mean to create a culture that is worth keeping. We are back, and we're learning all kinds of new things about K-pop and about culture. Culture is this buzzword, but it's one that's been around for a long time, and actually I think it's here to stay because I think there's so much truth built into it that unlike some buzzwords, culture is not a variation of another word or phrase that we're just kind of repackaging. Culture is and has been. What is culture? If you think of culture on the broadest scales, that's where I want you to go. Wherever your brain takes the mental imagery, when we say culture, go there. That's a great place to start. It doesn't even matter. You might think, oh, I'm thinking of like a distant land. I'm thinking of when I've traveled to another culture. My brain immediately goes to travel. I travel to other places. I've been fortunate. I've gone to other countries. I've seen other cultures. I know Anj has gotten to travel quite a bit. Lemuel, have you traveled quite a bit? I assume you have, but I could be wrong.
A little, not a ton, but yes, I've been to a few other countries.
What's the favorite country you've ever visited?
Ooh, I really loved Japan. We were there for 12 hours layover, and I just like the food, like the people. It's cool.
What was one thing in Japan that was really a culture shock to you that you saw that either pleasantly surprised you or just maybe like, wow, I am shocked by this. Like, this is really weird or foreign to me.
I was really surprised. We were in the Tokyo metro area. All of the alleys and nooks and crannies of the city weren't dirty. Like there was a lot of alleyways that were just packed with different things, whether it be stores or houses, but it was very clean and orderly.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's a great answer. Anj, I know you've traveled quite a bit. Have you been to Japan? Would you echo that same sentiment?
Yeah. Yeah. My hardest thing with Japan is there is literally like 14 different organizations to throw out your trash. Like, and you have to follow it. Like Lem said, they're so orderly. So we spent more time trying to figure out what goes in which trash can than we did, honestly, probably doing anything else. We were like, okay, half of that fork goes here.
I love that.
Top of this fork goes there. This is where the bowl goes. Yeah, they are like super uberly clean, responsible, eco-friendly, all the things. So yeah, that actually probably shocked me the most there too, Lem. Outside of the crazy traffic, they just moved
Anj, what's
so
the
fast
biggest
as well.
What's the biggest culture
just
shock
big
you've seen in your travels? Maybe not Japan, something else. Can you think of one? I know I'm putting you on the spot, big time on the spot. I'll tell you what. I'll give you a chance to think about that. Lemuel, what were you going to say?
I was going to say one other thing about Japan is they had old cars. All the taxis were old. Like, I don't know if they're from the 70s or 80s, but they seemed like they were new in the sense that they had all either been made that year or repainted. So I thought that was really interesting. Like an old style, but they're all not beat up.
Wow. Okay. So, this is good. And this is giving a great picture because you're noticing as they are describing their experiences with Japan, you can even start to see other words to describe that culture. You're seeing these stories, you're seeing these specific things, but then I'm picking up words. I've never been to Japan, but from this description, I'm going, well, Japan seems very orderly. They seem organized. They seem like, wow, they take care of stuff. I mean, just from the cars or the alley, wow, they're taking care of their stuff. Anj, give me another, you got one from your travels somewhere?
I do. There's actually a lot to choose from. I'm talking everywhere from like Israel to Africa, to Europe. And hilariously, what's really come to my mind in terms of what shocked me, because I had been all over, so I wasn't typically shocked by too much, but this actually really got us when we went to Amsterdam. They just like openly have prostitution like in the windows, like in just, it is very, it is way more open than I would have ever expected. I didn't even know that was like a thing that you could do. And so honestly, maybe ranging from like even, I don't know if it was sex trafficking or prostitution, but it was very like unapologetic. very open. We were like, wow, this is so shady. But also I loved Amsterdam. That was one of my favorite cities as well, but it was like also very dark. So that was, in terms of anything else, any other food, any other language, any other kind of people, that was like very shocking.
Well, I
to us,
appreciate that
honestly.
dark turn. Really gives me a lot to work off of as we expound upon that and try to make people feel good about culture that we went to sex trafficking and prostitution. After this quick break, we will have
culture,
a prayer
isn't it?
vigil and do our best. No, it's when we talk about culture, I want you to, when we talk about company culture, I actually think that if we are in leadership positions, if we have thought about this stuff before, I actually think we've talked about it so much at this point that we are narrowing our scope too much. So I wanted to start the conversation by broadening the scope and say, when we say culture, that may be about as broad as you could describe humanity. It is cultural. Like, what is our culture? Mm-hmm. It is also ubiquitous in that culture and the way that we interpret culture is everywhere. When you think about travel, then we broaden it to go, well, all of these things are culture, from something, honestly, that's pretty potentially dark all the way to something that's completely benign. Like, oh, you have this interesting vending machine in Japan, or wow, they have really clean cars and taxis and alleys, all the way to, wow, there was a lot of, potentially shady, certainly unethical to most of us, immoral things that we're like, gosh, that was, but it's there. It is a part of that culture. So culture then is all of it. It's the good. It's the bad. It's the stuff you don't want people to see. It's the stuff you're embarrassed by. It's the stuff you're proud of. It's all of it. All of that represents our culture in some way. So when we talk about culture, I don't want you to just narrow it down to be like, oh, well, this is how we operate from 9 to 5. Or this is, I think that, like I said, we've talked about it so much that we can almost get too narrow of a scope as leaders in trying to build culture. It's like, hey, we got to fix our culture. Let's have a meeting. We got to fix our culture. Let's have a retreat. Or, hey, over the next 6 months, we're going to have a culture of this. Well, yes, we should have meetings and thoughtfulness and those sorts of things toward culture, but it's not a snapshot. It is also not short term. That's why it's very difficult. Because once you achieve culture, you have to sustain it. You have to keep it. It's work. So the best way that I like to think about culture is twofold. Number one, travel. That helps us go to foreign lands. If we've been fortunate enough to travel, if we've gone other places, then we can see that and we go, oh yeah, that is a different culture. And there are things that are obvious. What I love about that is it gives us permission. And I would do the same thing with your culture, especially if you are looking at a culture that in the back of your mind, if you said, hey, we're going to do a cultural analysis. Let's look at our team. Let's look at our organization. If in the back of your mind, you kind of wince, you go, oh, this is not going to be fun. This is not going to be pretty. I'm a little bit nervous. You know what? Act like you're going to a foreign land. It's okay. Like, it is okay. You have to start with a willingness and an openness to say, well, what is good? What is bad? If I was entertaining someone from another culture, from a foreign country, there would be things that I would show them that I would be happy about, I would be pleased about. There would be also things that I would be slightly embarrassed by. If I'm driving them through Tulsa, Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, there are things that I would go, this is awesome. This is great. I'm proud of it. You should check it out. There are also things that I'd be like, I don't really want to take you there. We're not really going to go over there. We're not going to go check that out. Or they're going to ask, well, what about that? That looks really run down and terrible. What's up with that? Well, I kind of have an embarrassing answer, or I'm not really proud of that answer. That's okay. No culture's perfect. So let's start with saying no culture's perfect. You have to have this willingness to do hard work, difficult work, look at yourself, look at your leadership, look at your team, look at the culture if you want to get the culture you want. It starts with being honest. There's a great quote by Max Dupree that says the first job of any leader is to define reality. So we have to define reality when it comes to our culture. Anj, what you got?
I think the one thing that has helped me a lot when we think about culture and when we think about even a good analogy for it is this idea of working out or exercise in that sense. Like, even a lot of people will start exercise or start working out with a goal. They want to lose weight. They want to get stronger. They want to be more athletic. Whatever the goal is typically why they start working out. So great. Once you do all the work and achieve that goal, It is never done.
That's right.
You are going to have to work to maintain that weight, maintain that goal, maintain that athleticism. It is a never-ending life journey. How you do that through your life really changes through seasons. Well, I couldn't go and work out as much in this season, but I ate a lot healthier. In this season, our eating was worse, but I worked out a lot more. There's so many different ways to maintain the goal once you hit it. However, you still need to maintain it. There's never going to be a finish line of, can't you believe we did that? Look at that. It's done. Culture is the same way. You're never going to reach this finish line and hit this point in time where it was like, I'm so glad we fixed it. Now we're done.
Yeah, one of the quotes that I found that aligns with that, it says, anything that is measured and watched improves. And that's by Bob Parsons.
I love the idea
Yep.
that there are also multiple ways to achieve the same goal. So a lot of times when we think culture, we try to copy and paste. I think of, it's slightly dated now, but I think of like when Google was really rising in meteoric success, it was like Google culture. And there became all these caricatures of like nap pods and ping pong tables and those sorts of things. And that kind of, it was like a lacquer to me. It was like the outer paint that people saw. And so there was this almost like copy paste. Oh, well, if we want to have a fun culture, we need to take this stuff that these other people are doing, Google in this case, or anyone, and we say, oh, let's do that here. Let's take this over here and place it on top of our organization to have the culture of fun or to have the culture of productivity or have the culture of this. That's not really the way it works. You might be able to get some good ideas from other places. Absolutely. I agree. There's nothing new under the sun. Every great idea is probably stolen. Yes. So you can take ideas from other places, but ultimately that's not how you get a culture. Like whatever idea you take from somewhere else is going to adapt itself to your culture. So in other words, that's pretty good. This is actually, I didn't know that we would stumble upon this, but you might read a great book and come up with a great idea and pull it into your organization. But the culture is going to win out. That's why Peter Drucker, and I know another quote that we found, Lemuel, is Peter Drucker's famous culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's what he means. You're bringing that strategy into your culture. Your culture is literally going to consume that strategy and spit out whatever the combination is. If the culture is in place that you want and you put a strategy that aligns with it, then great, you're going to have great results. Otherwise, you might go, well, why did that idea not work? It was a great idea. Yes, it was a great idea, and you put it into a culture of toxicity, and it didn't work. That's why if you are about to get a divorce and you go on a vacation, that's a strategy. Great, let's go on a vacation. Let's rekindle this fire. Great. Culture, the culture of toxicity or the culture of shame or the culture of abuse or whatever culture that your marriage, you're taking that culture into that vacation, and it's going to eat that strategy of a vacation for lunch. And guess what? You still got a divorce. Now you just owe $15,000 for that second honeymoon. So that's why that doesn't work. You have to say, what do we want to be as a culture, and create those things in small ways. Ansh.
Yeah, I think I have a really good example of that and it working well, but naturally seeing it surprised me. It ended up working well, though. It didn't end up going bad, but it did surprise me in a lot of those ways. So I used to lead a department in a former job I had and before I say this horrible example, please remember these are college students. So I led a department of 30 college students who typically worked with us day to day, and then a few other full-time staff members. And so these are college students. So culture is truly there whether you're doing it or not. Like, especially in that demographic, you really have to be intentional with the culture because they will just grab it from you and take it from you. So I was always really challenged in those ways. Our staff meetings were just honestly filled with culture, and it was culture that existed before I was there. So I am coming in on pretty much years built on culture, the things we say, so many little things. Like, we would throw shoes if we thought someone did something really good. To this day, no idea where that came from, but it is still a culture that's resonated all the way through the department. They would do 100 little things, whatever. Okay. So I always had to be intentional when I wanted to make a change to make sure it matched our culture. We had a problem because we have 30 students and we all worked in the same just little tiny office, and they are messy. They're actually disgusting. They would just leave dishes. They would leave plates. They would leave like crumbs on the floor. They would come into my office. We'd have a meeting. They'd leave. And I'm like, how did I just acquire like 15 bottles of soda and a Red Bull and snacks and like what crumbs on the chair? I felt like I was parenting and sometimes. So I was over it. I was done. I was like, this is ridiculous. We had tried like assigning roles. We were like, hey, this group has to clean at this time. We had tried doing everything. I end up finding one day I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see in a very different context and different setting, they were going through a staff meeting and they were almost like bingo, like roll calling people that were going to, I think it was something like speak that Sunday. It might've been at church or something like that. And everyone would like get up and celebrate. We had a huge culture of celebration where I was as well. So I was like, oh, I bet that this would actually really feed our culture. And it was something I had to bring in our staff meeting. And so it still had to feed that. So I end up coming up with this idea that we weren't going to choose groups. We weren't going to assign things, and we were going to almost count it as an honor. So it was like this, if you are assigned a vacuum, we draw this whole roll of like a bingo kind of spinner. And we draw a name and like you have this honor of vacuuming this week, and everyone like lift you up and praise you and like dance all cute. Around. And it really actually ended up working most of the time. And then the tagline that I put in on it that fit our culture is if they didn't do that, we would have almost the reverse kind of not celebration, a celebration for everyone else, but that person's whole little mini department they were a part of would have to I would make this concoction of various foods.
I was going to say, were you just running a youth group? Sorry. This sounds like you're just running a youth group.
I really, to be honest, it really, it was a lot of that, but it was just also a lot of like other things too. So I would make this concoction of food and their whole team would have to eat it because of the activity that they didn't clean or do or whatever it was. And so it ended up working really well. This is where it worked positive. I saw something, the way they were doing it wouldn't have really fit our culture. But as soon as I introduced it, like our whole team, they ended up coming up with a chant every time we entered this phase of our little drawing. They would have this chant they all do together. I didn't even come up with like the lifting people up and shaking chairs and doing all of that. But like, so it ended up turning into such a bigger thing than I initially thought. But it was because of exactly what you said. Our culture bought into that, fed it, and the culture triumphed the strategy. I just wanted them to clean. I don't care how they did it or what they did, but they bought in so much to the culture and put our own little spins on it. And it worked really well. Our office was also really clean on Fridays because that was their deadline to clean before they had to eat baby food.
One of the things I love about your example is I'm guessing there was a lot of laughing going on during all of this. One of the things I've noticed as well is I feel like humor is one of the best ways to correct and celebrate. So you can use humor in both ways. I have a quick example. I was leading a team meeting previously, and we went around and we would do wins and works. So things we could that we did well, things that we could work on. Well, there was one girl in particular who always had something that we could work on, or she found the problems easily. But this particular day, no one had anything, and we kind of had a culture of roasting one another. And I said, I'm not going to say her name, but I said, hey, so-and-so, do you have anything? And it was in a comedic type of way, and everyone kind of chuckled. But afterwards, like the next day or so, she said, hey, I've really been thinking, like, I don't want to be that person who always finds problems. I want to start finding solutions. So it was a creative way to use humor to correct, but not do it in a mean way. So I loved your example because it just shines a light on humor as a tool.
Well, anytime that you can bring people together. So what you just described is exactly what we're saying. That's the Peter Drucker quote of culture. You tried other strategies. Hey, we're going to have a list. We're going to rotate. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. You probably, even before that, you tried small strategies, because I want you to realize, and this is where we'll end, anything you do is a strategy. You might not be thinking strategically, but anything you do is a strategy. It's like, well, I want my spouse to clean up. Well, okay. Hey, you should clean up. Well, you just took that strategy. You took a very direct, simple, shortcut approach. It was easy on you, and it was a very shortcutted strategy, but that was your strategy. Anything you do is a strategy. That's actually fairly quotable. I'm going to hold on to that for a second because I've never said that, but it's so true. Anything you do is a strategy. Most of us have poor strategies. We do things, and it's like, why are you doing it like that? Culture eats strategy for breakfast because you tried other things. Anj, before you even had systems, you probably tried very small strategies. Hey guys, can we do a better job of cleaning up around here? It's not a big deal, but I really appreciate you. I know that we have a lot of fun, but let's just try to clean up a little more. Strategy, softball. Let me just remind everyone. That was the first Slack messages.
Slack messages.
This is the initial strategy. I sent an email. Well, if we really want to dive into leadership, most people stop at their first strategy. Most people stop at strategy number one. And strategy number one was, well, I sent the email and nobody changed. Well, that's not how humans work, especially if you want to build culture.
Yeah,
and I'm talking, and this is where that's not how civilizations are built. That's not how marriage is sustained. And that's not how good organizations come to be. You have to work at it. You have to work over and over and over again. Because culture is a combination of the decisions we make every day. It's those little things we make. So Anj tried a couple strategies, didn't work. And then she went, wait a minute, this is how I can do it. I can tie it in with the culture. I can say, we have a culture of celebration, fun, humor. We do this all the time. I'm just going to add this into the culture that already exists. And it goes back now as we close this out. You need to be thinking, if you are not getting the results you want in any area, whether it is your marriage, whether it is your family, your kids, whether it is a friendship, whether it is a church or faith-based organization, whether it is a work environment, wherever it is, if you're not getting the results you want, challenge the culture that you've created. Say, well, what culture do we have that is creating that result? And then you have to take a step back and ask ourselves, well, what decisions are we making, strategies that are going into creating this culture? Because it's over time. Healthy cultures aren't developed quickly, and also neither are unhealthy cultures. It takes time for either one of those to develop, but it's the small things that we, like Lim said, culture is what we correct, allow, or celebrate. So here's your litmus test. We're going to add one more to that. Ask yourself, if it's my home and I don't like what I've got, what are you allowing? What are you allowing? I see Jen Murr, I didn't even expect to go so much marriage, but this is just what's hitting me in the face. Her favorite thing to say to me is, as she has friends of hers, contemporaries, frustrated or griping about their marriage, her favorite piece of advice is, you're allowing him to do that. You're allowing him to do that. Whatever it is, whether it's a small frustration or a gigantic thing, she says, you're allowing him to do that. And it sounds like, oh, wow, almost like that can sound almost abrasive. But it's like, no, you're allowing people to talk to you like that. You're allowing people to abuse your schedule like that. You're allowing people to get away with that. And it doesn't mean that not allowing doesn't mean that I come in and I pick a fight. But it means I simply stand up and I say, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to allow this type of behavior as a culture, as a family, as a team. We're not going to do that anymore. So what do we allow? What do we correct? What do we celebrate? And one more that I like is, what would an outsider notice? Anj.
I think a good summary on the allowance piece there, a good quote I have, or that I always think of with this, is what you permit, you promote. That kind of comes to my mind as a quick catch-all, maybe to say to your team or even to say to your kids. But I've just written it so true in culture.
Absolutely.
What you permit,
and we've just now unpacked. We're actually going to have a couple of episodes because we got way too much information to share with you. We are already running kind of long. So thanks for listening today. If you are in any organization of any kind, you are in a culture. Whether that is political, work, family, you are a part of this culture. And my encouragement to you today is, if you're a part of the culture, you can influence the culture. If you feel powerless, you are not. That is a self-limiting belief that you are imposing on yourself. You have influence. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. If you want to change the culture, you can. Is it going to be hard? Yes. Is it going to take time? You betcha. But can you do it? Yes. And if you're willing to commit to it, those are the ones who actually distinguish themselves as exceptional leaders. So if you address culture, have the bravery, have the courage to look honestly at yourself and at the culture. Because I've done this. I try to do it lots, and I see lots of things I don't like. And it hurts. It doesn't feel good. It makes me wince. Sometimes it makes me cry. But you have to do the hard work to look at yourself, look at your life, look at the cultures you are in, and decide where you want them to go. then do something about it. That's when you're being a good leader.